welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a stroke survivor and grateful recovering alcoholic. And I'm still here and I'm still kicking. And I had a lot going on today. So I'm going to talk about what happened with the latest with all of this soap opera that is Rachel Miller's life. And then I'm also going to talk about being the best at being imperfect. See what I did there? So I have really had this all or nothing attitude. I keep hearing this all or nothing lately. And I feel like I did have an all or nothing attitude. But here's the thing. I wasn't putting all of my energy into something when I was drinking. I wasn't like, I want to be the best at this. Either I'm the best or I suck. Um, well, I wasn't going to do anything about it. I wasn't actually going to work for it. I just was going to either be the best or suck and actually not try to be either. I was just going to see what happens. Um, it's like, okay, I'll enter the race. I'm not going to train for it. I'm just going to see if I'm the best or I suck. That was really how I was approaching everything in my life when I was drinking, which was the first 42 years of my life, mind you. And the only satisfaction I ever got or that I ever understood there was being the best. I remember playing softball when I was growing up, and either you were the pitcher or you sucked. It wasn't good enough for me. It wasn't good enough if I was playing second base or I was shortstop or I was in the outfield. Either you were the pitcher or you sucked. That was my mentality. Either I hit home runs or I sucked. But I was the one that the coach said to bunt because I was a good bunter. And so I sucked. That was my mentality. Like, okay, well, he thinks that I suck at hitting, so I'm going to have to be the bunter. Well, you can do a lot by being a bunter. You can get people around the bases. So anyway, I stray. So I'm going to talk about like like uh I always, when I got older, okay, I had to do and be what I couldn't do. If I saw something that I couldn't do or that was out of my reach, I'm like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be that. But I never did the work to do it or be it. I just thought that I would be it, if that makes sense. And when I couldn't be, which was most often because I didn't do the work, then I sucked. I hope this is making sense. So I want to talk about trying versus succeeding versus being the best. And I'm definitely going to use the podcast as an example. But anyway, the first thing I want to do, though, is mention that I had a fantastic call today with a stroke survivor. And this is because I reached out to her on LinkedIn. I had watched a podcast that she had been interviewed in. And I also had gone to a stroke support group last week for stroke survivors and traumatic brain injury survivors. And they had mentioned her. So I found her on LinkedIn, reached out to her, and she was super excited about talking to me. And I just felt flattered that she was willing to give me that kind of time. And we talked for like an hour today. And she talked about a another woman that she knows that had a traumatic brain injury and had a vision impairment. And this woman was an artist, actually. And my symptoms are a little different than hers, but it's promising that her symptoms have actually improved and she is able to see the way that she needs to see. And so she was going to give me this woman's information so that I might be able to contact her and connect with her and just trade notes on her experience and see if she has any strength and hope to lend me. And so we talked about this new identity, and I shared with her a little bit about my challenges with long-term disability insurance and how, like I shared in my podcast yesterday, how I felt very much like myself yesterday when I was doing the work to try to solve the problem with my insurance. And what I realized today when I was talking to this new friend of mine, I was thinking, that has to be part of Rachel version 3.0 is she has to solve problems because that's what I enjoy doing. And what's funny is Rachel version 1.0 was a math major because she liked to solve problems. And and so it's something that has stuck with me. The problems are different, Rachel 2.0 loved her career so much because I was constantly solving problems. I sought out problems that I could solve. And that's where I found the most joy in my career was finding gaps that I could fill through writing strategy, implementation plans, or just doing, being an individual contributor and writing up big, communication uh, documents and stuff like that. So problem solving is something that I want to continue to bring with me. And so that was just something that came to mind today that I enjoyed realizing. And so we also talked about the need to have patience in this new normal that I'm trying to adjust to. And that's not just she advised me not just patience with myself, but patience with others as well. And it's interesting because that very much aligns with my patience that I was working really hard to have over the past 3 days. And another thing that she brought up, which I'm kind of giddy about, is she asked me if I had ever considered doing Toastmasters. And I thought, that's interesting because in my career, I had talked to my boss and our HR department about uh, talking to Toastmasters and trying to get a corporate account with Toastmasters so that we could, as a company, start improving our public speaking ability skills. And so I had actually attended a Toastmasters. It was the first time I had done that and just got to see what it was like. And she had recommended that because I talked about how passionate I am that this 3.0 of Rachel has got to communicate about recovery. And I want to communicate about my recovery from alcoholism, my stroke recovery, mental health, and eating disorder, and how important that is to me. If I'm going to prioritize my recovery, I have to help other people. That's what I have to do. That's what I'm here for. I'm not, if I'm going to put all of my energy into saving myself, then I'm going to bottle it and bring it wherever I can and share it with other people because it's just too valuable to just use on myself. So she really appreciated my I guess my story and what I had to share. So she said that she wanted to encourage me to participate in her if not her Toastmasters group, a Toastmasters group, and see if I might be able to start speaking. So I've got lots of practice speaking, both in my job and in my sobriety program. And I've been speaking to, I've actually had the opportunity to speak to rooms full of like 50 people or something like that, which I'm getting more and more comfortable doing it. It's something that I want to do and something that's been sitting in my mind as something that I would like to do. So it's just kind of, I don't know, it's interesting how as I continue to reach out and take action and do, that things are just naturally aligning, you know? I didn't even say anything to her about wanting to do public speaking, or I did talk about how I want to communicate, but what I had talked about is this podcast and all the reasons why this podcast is so important to me, and talked about how I've been playing around with writing some chapters in a book and how that's another channel that I'm hoping I can help others through. So, and by that she was like, "Have you thought about speaking?" So, I'm kind of excited. It's always great to have something new to look forward to. So, that's what happened today. So, that's good news. I had a pretty good day. Okay, so back to the topic, being the best at being imperfect. So, um, one of the things that I think I'm challenged by, and I don't know if you can relate to this, I've talked a lot about my obsessiveness and how as soon as I got sober, it like unveiled itself that I needed to be obsessed about something at all times. And I'm trying to use that power for good and not evil. So I've tried to shift it to one hobby or one interest or one thing in recovery. And I'm trying really, really hard to make sure that I'm doing one thing at a time because this obsessiveness can actually grow into this monster where I'm obsessed with several things at one time. And if I'm being obsessed with multiple things at one time and I'm trying to be great at all of them, there's a problem there, you know? There's a big problem there. And I I just imagine some people listening are like, this chick is crazy. But so okay, what I wanted to talk about a little bit is what we see in other people's lives is an illusion, right? We see what others want us to see. And this is what is so important for me about this podcast because my goal is to talk about and show you what really is for me. So I talked to my new friend today about this. I'll probably refer back to that conversation a lot during uh, this episode, so you're forewarned. But what I like to do in this podcast is really let the pains and the imperfections and the ugly crying and all of that just be what it is. Um, I say what I need to say. I do have a script that I write every day, but that is only because when I first started the podcast, I didn't start out with a script. I started out with a couple bullet points, and I found that when I listened back to them, that most of the time I was saying, and so, all these filler words, and so, uh, um, and it was driving me crazy. So I don't know who else it was driving crazy, but I decided that I need a script of some sort so that I'm not the reason why I have those filler words is because I'm thinking while I'm talking, and I really prefer to save you guys from as many filler words as possible. I know that in Toastmasters, that's a big thing about reducing now I'm be totally hyper focused on it. Reducing filler words. So because of my head pain, I don't cut out my filler words. Like after I record, I don't go back and edit the audio. And that's because it would hurt my head. Like I would end up being miserable before I go to bed, and I would end up waking up with a hangover feeling if I were to do that kind of editing on my computer. So all I do is I'm just uploading the audio and and sticking it into Spotify. It's really easy for me to do. So what you hear a lot of times are me clearing my throat, or I think 2 days ago, I think it was, I said, "Hold on a second, I got to take a sip of my Coke." And after I took a sip of my Coke, like normally somebody would edit that out because I get tickles in my throat. I get more and more of those as I get older. But anywho, I actually choked on that Coke that day, 2 days ago. And I did have to cut that out because I was like, but I rarely cut the stuff out because of my head. But anyway, my goal is to show my imperfections on purpose. And that is because I want you all to see what's really happening. I want you to know how recovery is not easy. I don't want to come across the way that, like, when I've had some neighbors in the past where they look like they have the perfect life, you know, mom, dad, kids. And then one day I walked outside and I was standing like right outside my front door, and I heard the mom in the garage, and she was like screaming at her not little, at her son. And I was like, "Oh." And it was such a realization to me that what I saw was what they were showing me. It wasn't reality, and it was an illusion. And I don't want this podcast to come across ever as an illusion, as me trying to put lipstick on a pig. Like this is the pig. That's it. I wish I could do video because I think that would add a lot of more a lot more imperfection to it, but I just can't right now. It would be terrible for my head to try to manage that. The podcast is available on YouTube, but it's just a picture. Like the video part is just a picture, and it'll have to be that way for, as long as I'm suffering with these issues. Uh, so as far as like perfection versus imperfection, the past 8 years in my career, anybody in my job is going to smile right now. But in the company that I was working for, we strived for perfection. And that's a tall order because there isn't a lot of room for error in the field that I was in. So I was managing communications to national security. And it I had to be careful, you know? I had to be careful. And it wasn't just being careful. It was like artwork. Honestly, to communicate, to write these documents, it was like being an artist of words. And I learned so much about patience and attention to detail. I learned about having empathy for my audience. I I learned about how an audience or how a reader can interpret something depending on, even just one change of a word can change an entire uh, interpretation of a document. And I learned that from working with this company and working with the leadership. And there are some people that don't have patience for that. Honestly, when I was working, I used to work at the same company as my boyfriend, like, gosh, how many years ago? Like 30 years ago? That seems like for 40. How old am I? No, it couldn't have been 40 years ago. 30 years ago. And I remember my boss saying, and I think he still works there. I remember him saying that I didn't have attention to detail or something like that. So this was in my 20s. I guess I was probably like 25. So about 25 years ago. Wow. And I remember him saying that I didn't have attention to detail. And I was thinking this morning as I was preparing for this podcast, I was like, man, if that boss of mine from then could talk to my boss from now, I would love to be able to fly in the wall to listen to what my review from back then would be compared to my review from now, because I I was the person at this last job that I was at who was like the final approver as to whether something was allowed to be published or not. So I was like the last line of defense, and I had to be really, really picky and detailed about things. And well, it's just kind of I loved it, okay? But it's really nice to be able to be imperfect. Now, with this podcast, I can do whatever the hell I want and I can say whatever I want to say. And it feels good to like make mistakes and it nobody's gonna suffer from it. You know what I mean? Like, it was important where I was that I needed to be that way, and now I can relax a little bit. I can say filler words if I want to, but I try to be perfect, right? So I'm trying to remove my filler words. And I have to say that I spent my life before then, and this is probably why my first boss from 25 years ago was like, you don't have attention to detail, was because back then I did just enough. I always did just enough. Um, and for him, it wasn't enough. Um, Now, mind you, this is when I was drinking, so it was just enough. I drank just enough for me to be able to get up the next day and drive an hour and a half to work and spend the whole day there. Like everything was just enough to get by. Um, it was when I got sober that this perfectionism, if you will, I don't even like to say that. It sounds like a cuss word to me. This perfectionism mindset was a little more apparent to me. And I don't even know if I would say it's perfectionism. It seems like obsessiveness. Like I want to be the best, but I think I know that perfection is impossible. And in my sobriety program, it's repeated all the time, progress, not perfection. And I just did an episode on it, I don't know, almost a week ago. So, how do we embrace imperfection? And if you go online and you search on YouTube, because that's where I do my research, if you search embrace imperfection, there's 20,000 videos on embracing imperfection. And I listened to several of them, not a lot, but just kind of to get an idea of what people were saying about embracing imperfection. And that was one of the reasons why I picked a different title, because I would just fall into the mix, embracing imperfection. That's not what I want to do. Because why? Because I like to be the best at something. So we're not just embracing imperfection, we're being the best at being imperfect. And so in sobriety, when we address character defects and acknowledge them, we can begin to embrace our imperfections. These are what make me who I am. My imperfections are what make me who I am. And in my program, we call it um, being right sized. And what that means is accepting who you are as you are. It's not totally the same as embracing imperfections, but hear me out. So, being right sized means you no longer see yourself as greater than who you are. And this allows you to start making more reasonable demands on yourself. So, I was always thinking, I'm great, so I have to do great things. Well, that gets exhausting. It gets exhausting to be great and do great things all the time. And what I'm trying to do in this 3.0 version is be happy. I want to do things in a way that in the end I'm happy. That's my goal. My goal is to get better, healthy wise, get better, physically and mentally get better. So, when I allow myself to slow down and stop feeling guilty for resting, which I struggle with, I can allow my imperfections to mold my growth. I can't build patience without feeling impatient and learning how to navigate it while I'm in it. And I can't heal without showing myself what's broken and processing it and talking about it and getting angry and crying and again, navigating the storms strengthens my sea legs. And I talked to my new friend today about crying. And I talked to her about getting angry and grieving and all of these feelings that I've been feeling over the past several months. And I talked to her about how I don't really cry. And this is something that I used to do all the time. I've talked about that in previous episodes. I used to cry all the time. And when I'm by myself, I don't really cry. I cried, I can tell you the times that I cried. I have told you the times that I've cried, but I told her today, the most I cry is when I do my podcast. Um, and I cried more in the early episodes than I have recently. And I think I was very much needing to cry um, over the weekend, like on Friday and Saturday in particular, because I was so frustrated with the disability claim. But I didn't. And she stressed the importance of of trying to give myself permission to cry and be angry and that kind of thing. So, I'll work on it. I'll work on it. I think what I need to do is reach out to people because that's when I get emotional. Because otherwise, when I'm by myself, I'm doing stuff. I'm listening and I'm doing stuff because I don't want to think. Um, I'm sewing or I'm playing with my dog or I'm doing yoga or I'm listening to a book or I'm preparing my podcast. And that's on purpose. I think it's because it keeps me from crying and getting angry and grieving. So I think it's a distraction. Actually, I think I just realized something about myself, interestingly enough. So I'll have to work on that. So in sobriety, we learn greatly from those who came before us. And we learn so much from the people that experienced what we're going through, often more than we can learn from doctors. For example, today, talking to my new friend, um, you can relate, and there's just little bits of gold when you can relate to somebody and they say something that you haven't yet experienced, but they have, but it's around the same topic. Um, so doesn't it make sense that we learn the most when we experience something ourselves and make mistakes and change our course accordingly? That is what imperfection is. So it's really required in order for us to get better, in order for us to grow. And moreover, we can use it to help others. The older that we get, it seems like the less we're supposed to be imperfect. That's what it seems like to me. Have you ever been in a conversation where somebody responds to you in a way that's like, you should know this? Or even more annoyingly, you don't know this? That's one of the most aggravating things to me. Like if somebody says, so do you know who Taylor Swift is? And like if somebody were to say to me, do you know who Taylor Swift is? And I say, no, they'll go, you don't know who Taylor Swift is? I can't stand that. Side note, I do obviously know who Taylor Swift is, but when somebody repeats back, it it is a gesture like it comes across like you're stupid, you know? Well, my response is always like, if I knew who they were, I would have said I knew who they were. I get really annoyed when somebody responds that way. I don't know if it's just me. Leave a comment in the comment section if you know what I'm talking about. Okay. So it's like when we're older, we're expected to have experienced everything already. And I can tell you that where I am now in my life, I'm in completely uncharted territory. And the older I get, I continue to feel this way. I think it's because my previous experiences, if I'm using them with a growth mindset, continue to thrust me forward into new undiscovered territory. So it's a good thing when I'm introduced to something I haven't yet experienced. Some days I feel like I'm learning more about how not to do things than how to do them. And that is good. That's a good thing to do that. If I'm if I'm trying new things and I do all of them perfect, what fun is that? You know? I mean, it depends on what you're what it is. But yeah, it's no fun. Honestly, if I were to go to a picnic or something and we're playing darts, and I don't know why you would play darts outside, but just hear me out. Um, if we're playing darts and I hit the bullseye every time, there is no fun in that, you know? So okay, so embracing imperfection. This is what I do. The first thing, ready, set, go. That just start. It's almost like not even ready, set. Just go. Just start what it is. It's going to be uncomfortable. And for me, it often leads to laughter because it feels so strange and uncomfortable. But welcome the discomfort and vulnerability. If you go back to episode 1, of this Recovery Daily podcast, it is a perfect example of Ready, Set, Go. Because I went back and listened to it like, I don't know, several weeks ago, and I was uncomfortable listening to it. Okay, number 2, let the ideas in after you go, then let the ideas in and capture them. Um, one, I was listening to Bird by Bird, which is a book on writing, and the author, who is hilarious, I really think you should listen. Whether you want to write or not, listen to Bird by Bird. I loved this book. It made me laugh. So, anyway, she says that she uh, puts an index card in her pocket and brings it with her all the time for ideas, because she's a writer. But just today, I was outside with my dog, and I thought, oh, I wish I had an index card in my pocket because I had a brilliant idea. And wouldn't you know it, I don't know what the idea was. But capture your ideas. And by that first episode that I did, I knew right away that I needed an intro and an outro. I needed to put my puppies in their dens for a nap because they barked in the first episode. And I had to work on reducing my filler words. And later, I knew I needed a website. Well, this is maybe a little bit of my obsessiveness started coming in, but I knew I needed a website and I knew I needed to write a blog. So I just continue now to welcome new ideas. Lately, my new ideas include reaching out to different people. And so welcome the more ideas the better, but make sure you capture them. Um so number 3, become tolerant of chaos. And this is something that I started when my kids were little babies, being tolerant of chaos. And the reason why is because I remember so much watching parents with kids and they are playing at the playground and they're not allowed to get dirty. And I thought, I am never gonna not let my child get dirty. Never. And I never have. I've never not let them get dirty. If I'm wrong, you children need to call me and tell me when I have restricted you from getting dirty. But it's so important to me that we allow ourselves to get dirty and get ugly and get messy because it's just like being imperfect. Um, the best example I can tell you about being tolerant of chaos is when my son was in high school. I think it was high school. I got him a acoustic drum set from a yard sale, and it was down in the basement. And because he was all into music, I mean, he's always been into music since he was a toddler. And but I could do a whole episode on that. So he would play these drums in the basement, and they're acoustic. They are loud as hell. And it was like rattling the whole house. And my boyfriend would come over. I would have the TV on, and I'm looking at the TV, and my boyfriend is there, and I don't even hear the drums because I was able to just tune them out. And I don't know. It's because I wanted him to get messy. I wanted him to get dirty. I wanted the chaos because that's how he's gonna get his energy out, get fun, get creative. So, probably too much on being tolerant of chaos, but I think chaos is a beautiful thing. Number 4, look at imperfection as flexibility. This podcast cannot be done perfectly. Any way I do this podcast is exactly how it should be done. And I don't even know what perfect looks like for this podcast because I'm so flexible to let it come out however it comes out. Because however it comes out, I know there's somebody on this planet that would like that one episode, just one person. If they find it or not, now that's another story. But okay, number 5, refine and massage until I'm happy versus agonize until it's perfect. So guess what? If I tried to agonize until each episode was some version of perfect, uh, then there wouldn't be a daily episode, right? There wouldn't be a recovery daily. It would be recovery monthly if I was trying to make it perfect. So that's what I've got on how I shoot to welcome imperfection. So when I was drinking, I was the best darn alcoholic there was. I really was. when I was in college, I wanted to be the best at case day, which was when we all sat down and drank a case together. And guess what? I was the best. I was the last one standing on case day. Um, and I used to be so proud of that. Isn't that sad? I was so proud of that. And when I started recovering from my stroke in 2021, I wanted to be the best at recovering. I wanted to get back to work. I wanted to be on short-term disability, not go on long-term disability, and get back to work because I was going to be the best at recovering. And look at what it did to me. 2 years later, I am completely unable to do any of the things that I was doing um, after, months after I had my stroke. So I broke me somehow. I broke me. And so now here I am. I'm unemployed. I never imagined I would ever say that. And I'm trying to be the best unemployed disabled person I can. And I don't know what that looks like. But I think what it looks like is me being happy. I think finally being the best at something is me being happy. That's what it looks like. And I know that because today I was able to do that. Like today, I gave myself permission to rest. And I went and got a pedicure, which was heavenly. And I got my nails done, which I got Halloween purple. and and so for me to be able to rest, it means that I'm doing this right. That's what I see happening. And while I was having my afternoon of rest, I got a call from the optometrist and vision therapy office. And the woman on the phone said that the optometrist and the vision therapist had a call together and recognized that my paperwork was filled out completely wrong. And they're going to refill it out, and the doctor is going to write a detailed letter as to why the incorrect information was submitted. So I gave myself permission to rest, and while I was resting, I got that good news that my work was paying off. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.